You know how the story originally broke? The Packers podcaster named Big B.
Shut up, Big B.
Jamal Williams is inside the 30, out in front, a Green Bay touchdown.
Jamal Williams is the GOAT, the GOAT. That's all you need to know.
Okay, let's keep it under 25 minutes, all right?
We might be too young to have a spotted cow, but we are both diehard Packers fans. Into the Underage Packers podcast. This is episode 145. The Green Bay Packers are now 2-4. Is that correct? Are we that far into the season already?
No.
2-3?
2-3.
2-3. That's a great start to the episode, just to show off our knowledge. But I promise we know. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about the Packers match against the Denver Broncos, and hopefully by the end of the week they are not 2-4. Hopefully by the end of Sunday night they are back at 500. Should be an interesting game. After the Raiders week, we have kind of learned to not get too excited about the opponent, because the same stuff that we're talking about the Packers opponent, their opponent has every right to say crap about the Packers too. So with all that being said, joining me, I'm Joey, by the way, and joining me as always to preview this Denver Broncos game is my co-host Big B. How are we feeling going into this game in Mile High?
I am absolutely terrified because if we lose this game, I will be questioning all my life choices leading up to that said moment that the clock hits 0. But we're not going to lose, so I don't have to worry about it.
I hate to go all boomer on you, but it's like, I don't know, man. I feel like there's going to be a bad season at some point in our lives, and there has been.
Yes.
You can count all the bad seasons on one hand in our lifetime, which is kind of a flex. But like there's going to be rough patches. So we are just going to have to learn how to get through those as young Packers fans. But yeah, I pretty much came to that point at the Raiders after the Raiders game last week, not questioning all my life choices, not that deep, but just of like, all right, this is the team we're dealing with. These aren't flukes. There's going to be a lot of games like this in this season, and we are just going to have to be prepared for a long season that hopefully has a lot of growth. And we've talked about this before, how the Bears game kind of set up our expectations to a bad spot. Seeing them. But like we talked about all of this offseason, this team is going to take a while to grow. Very young team, and we're just going to have to get used to that. However, through 5 games into the season now, it seems like they are getting worse. And progress is not linear at all. But it just seems like they're struggling with the same things every week and not getting better in any department. So this game against Denver should be a good stepping stone. However, like I'm fully at the point now, like we just need to admit that the Packers at their current spot are a bad football team. So there's that. That's just the facts. And that can change throughout the season. But as of right now, as of October 20th, 2023, the Green Bay Packers are a bad football team. So,
correct.
With that being said, let's talk about this bad football team. First off, that game against the Raiders was pretty representative, I think, of what this team is. A lot of times where they shot themselves in the foot. I feel like the only game where the Packers lost because the other team played better was the one against Detroit. Other than that, lost against the Falcons, lost against the Raiders. The Packers beat themselves. They just had so many opportunities to come back from this game, and the offense just did not do it. Did not get the job done. And yeah, so that Raiders game was very disappointing. The fact that the Packers were still in the game in the fourth quarter, the fact that the Packers were only down by 4 within the final minute says a lot about the Las Vegas Raiders, and probably says more about the Packers, unfortunately. But that Raiders game just feels representative of what we need to expect from this team So yeah, Big B, any thoughts on that Raiders game?
Yeah, that was a tough game all around to sit and watch. It definitely felt like we were losing by a lot more than like the 4 points, like you mentioned in the final minutes.
Yeah,
And I would say that's probably Jordan Love's worst start as a starter.
yeah,
I mean, not counting the Chiefs game because that was pretty much that game was pretty much washed from the beginning. I truly think he was still seeing ghosts from the Lions game.
yeah,
I just think that game just damaged his confidence so much for that Raiders game, even though he had like I would say like a week and a day. Was it a week and a
yeah,
day? Week and a few days to prepare for that game. Like that one interception he had where he threw right to the defender, that was not a good look. That was atrocious, you know?
yeah.
And the defense, and I'll say this also about Joe Barry, the defense. Like they're perfectly fine right now. I think they were solid. They didn't like, minus the Preston Smith lining up against Devontae Adams, minus that play. I mean, they looked very, very well manageable, I would say. Like they didn't lose us the game.
Yes,
So I'm just ready to flush that game down the toilet and move on to winning more football games because I miss winning. I'm
yes.
sad.
Although I will like, I hate that you reminded me of that Preston Smith on Devontae Adams thing.
Yeah.
That is like the biggest mess up of Joe Barry's tenure here in Green Bay. Like there has been a lot of things that go wrong, but that happening, like there's been times I don't know why it's always specifically Preston Smith that ends up getting put in coverage on really good wide receivers. Like he's been placed on Justin Jefferson in coverage before. And then this week against Devontae Adams, a player that the Green Bay Packers are very, very familiar with. Like, how does that happen in the red zone? Like, and I mean, thank God he only got 7, 8 yards off of it. And Joe Barry's answer in his press conference this week about how that happened and how he expected Preston to react was a pathetic answer on his part. He basically said, well, Preston just needs to survive that play. What? I mean, like, it's your job to not put him into that situation. So, you
Yeah.
know, at the end of the day, it's really not worth all that much of complaining for an 8-yard game, but also it's just like the principle of that cannot happen.
Yeah. And I was definitely laughing my ass off when that was going down. I was laughing for a good 5 minutes after that play happened because, like, how do you let that happen? Like,
Yeah.
oh my God. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, I don't know. That was a bad look for the Packers, and that was the most popular moment in NFL culture from that night because nobody wanted to watch Packers versus Raiders. Um,
Hmm.
so that's unfortunate that Preston Smith became an internet meme after that. Um, so yeah, and speaking of this defense, they had some interesting comments this week about their offensive counterparts. First off, you have Jair Alexander after the game. He said, I think at this point, it's pretty obvious that the defense has to not give up any touchdowns. I think that's part of being self-critical of our defense because the offense is pretty young and they're still figuring out their mojo. Now, Matt Schneidman, at first, he tweeted out just the first part of that quote of, I think it's pretty obvious that the defense has to not give up any touchdowns, which really made Jair's comment seem awful.
Yeah.
And it's not great comments. It's not a great view of the team's chemistry, but it's pretty blatant, and you really can't disagree with Jair when they let up only 17 points in a game and the offense just fails to show up and has 3 turnovers.
Yeah.
So you can't be too mad at Jair there. And then you have
That's just
Russ.
something you don't expect to hear in a press conference, like that's it's just
So
something like you just don't hear often. So it's not like
it's not a
like
great
oh
look,
yeah,
but
I mean, yeah.
also Jair has this is not the first time Jair has said something like that.
Yeah.
Which is just very much not the traditional Packer people way.
Hmm.
But that's fine because that's what I love about Jair. Sometimes he makes comments like that, which while true can be like, let's not say that. He makes comments like that, but then also like it translates to an aggressive player on the field that the Packers really lack. So that's Jair Alexander. And then later in the week, Russell Douglas, or no, it was just this past week, Russell Douglas was asked about Jair's comments and if he views the offense being young as an excuse and as like how the defense kind of views the offensive performance and what they think they need to do to like help them out. And Russell said, no, that has not been the messaging because they're not young. And if they are, they got to grow up. It ain't no such thing as being young. You had what, 5 games? That's enough. And that's just like how fast the NFL is. Like, you aren't young. You're a grown man. You're 22 years old. You've been playing football all your life. It's been 5 games into the season. Like, get on it. And like that's obviously like not the best way to put like the expectations players should have, because the Packers like whole thing is patience, and we've seen so many players that just need patience. But you can't disagree with him in the fact that the offense, like through 5 games, has not shown enough progress to be completely convinced that they're going to put it together. So that is the drama brewing in the defensive locker room. Big B, anything to add on those comments from Jair and then Russell?
They're not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's how I think that's how most Packer fans are feeling anyway.
Yes.
So I'm fine with it. They're cool.
Yeah.
I love hearing the players tell the truth. It's refreshing hearing
Most
this type
definitely.
of stuff.
And while some like old heads might view it as like, oh God, the team is falling apart. I think this is somewhat healthy, honestly, that they're willing to call each other out. Now, if it is a culture where they just like constantly trash on each other, that's not great. But everybody has to be holding everybody to their best standards. So there's that. One last thing on the offense on the Raiders game. We talked a little bit about Jordan Love's performance. I don't even know what his passer rating was, but I know at one point it was probably like in the 40s. So not great. 3 turnovers, bad throws. He just seemed like he was getting lost in the sauce. Seemed like the play calling was a little too much for him. Maybe not the play calling, but he was just trying to do too much, I think is the best way to put it. And not playing enough in the system. Like, you're not Patrick Mahomes. You're not 2014 Russell Wilson. You're not 2011 Aaron Rodgers. Don't try to be. Just be Jordan Love. And I'm not saying he's like exactly trying to emulate those players, but like just get your job done, please. And hopefully throwing 3 interceptions, because he was playing pretty clean games early on in the season. So hopefully having a really bad game against the Raiders, he realizes like, all right, I just need to stick to what I know.
And honestly, that was probably one of the worst games Matt LaFleur called in his time in Green Bay. Like, the play calls were atrocious. Like, they were bad.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the full conversation about Matt LaFleur right now because I don't know. There's just a lot to discuss there, and
on the energy.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get to it at one point. Yes, we'll get to it at one point when we know more about this team in this season. So yeah. All right. And then another thing about this Packers team right now that is just making this season even more frustrating to watch, and was also playing quite a big factor in the results, is just the sheer amount of injuries to important players. It has been so frustrating watching Aaron Jones not be able to be in this offense. And we talked so much before the season how, like, no matter what Jordan Love does, how great he is, how bad he is, Aaron Jones needs to be the focal point of this offense. Goes down in week 1, has not been fully healthy since then. And here we are in week 7, and he's just still not back. So it's really frustrating to watch that. You have Christian Watson still not back at 100%. Then you have Jair Alexander this past week at re-aggravating his back injury. Yeah, and he's not practicing as of Friday. Elton Jenkins not practicing as of Friday because of his leg injury. So these injuries are just really stacking on top of each other, and they are important to consider for the results that this team is putting out, which is just frustrating to see because we can't really get a clear idea of what this team is, what these young guys can do, or I'm sorry, grown up guys. Sorry, Russell, can do without the full tools available to them. So that has kind of sucked. Okay, those are the injuries. And then we did get some interesting practice squad news this week. Pretty much as interesting as practice squad news as you can get. The Packers signed James Robinson to the practice squad after deciding they wanted to move on from Big B's guy, Patrick Taylor, who got signed to the Patriots practice squad. Obviously, best to him. But this is an interesting signing. James Robinson, of course, had a very great rookie season in 2020, 1,070 yards, along with 7 touchdowns, and then tears his Achilles the next year, and just has not been the same ever since then. Spent the last season with the New York Jets, and here he is now in Green Bay. Will be interesting to see what role he has. I'm honestly surprised that Emmanuel Wilson is still on the roster for how little we see him out there. Even with all this time that Aaron Jones has been missing. So I really like this signing. I still think he has some potential. He showed a lot of talent in his rookie season, and hopefully he gets to see the field. Big B, any thoughts on the Robinson signing?
Yeah, I'm not getting like too excited about this because he's on the practice squad. I know we can bring him up, but like he'll be like running back 3 at the most. I don't think
Yeah.
he's better than AJ Dillon right now.
No.
And he's just his career has been downhill ever since his ACL injury. So it's just a practice squad move that,
Yes.
needed to happen at some point.
I believe it was Achilles, but yes, that
Achilles,
has really messed him up.
Yeah, whatever it is. Same
Yeah.
thing. It's the same thing.
Okay, and then on to this Denver Broncos game here. Packers come in as 1-point favorites heading into this game in Denver. And we talked about last week before the Raiders week about like that stats are for nerds, but the Raiders statistically suck on defense. And like the Broncos somehow suck even worse on defense, according to the stats. Now, a lot of these might be because of a 70-point showing against the Miami Dolphins earlier in the season. So, like, that is important to consider. But there was nothing good about these Broncos defensive numbers. First off, Maggie Loney pointed this out in her weekly pregame 6-pack for Cheats at TV. Maggie, great writer, great person. So she pointed out that opposing quarterbacks are averaging a 117.8 rating against Denver, which is dead last in the league. So there's that. And then you also have they are 32nd in points allowed per game. And then leave it to Peter Bukowski to point out some DVOA fun stats for us. The Broncos, dead last in overall defensive DVOA at 34.6%. And then the Broncos are dead last in passing DVOA too at 53.4%. And Peter follows that up with 3 exclamation points. And the crazy thing about this is just like the vast difference from 32 to 31 here. The Broncos defensive DVOA 34%. The next lowest is the Bears 31st at 19%. So a difference of 15% compared to the drop off from the Cardinals at 30, then to the Bears at 31, Cardinals at 17%, Bears at 19. 15% drop off to the Denver Broncos. So this is like some historically bad defensive play from Denver. So again, like I do not want to get too excited about this because like this could very well end up being like a get right game for the Denver Broncos at home, which would just be devastating. But like this should be like the Packers offense should not have trouble scoring on this team. Like, that should not be the issue in this game. If anything, the issue for the Packers should be like their defense having a bad day. That would be more encouraging of a sign to me. So yeah, this Broncos defense is not good. As far as the offense for Denver, Russell Wilson is looking better from what he did in 2022, which is not saying all that much, but he has let himself into a lot of sacks just from trying to do too much, like we were talking about with Jordan earlier. Has lost some speed, obviously. So just, there's the argument that sacks should be attributed as a quarterback stat, and apparently that seems to be the case with Russell Wilson. A lot of his sacks that he takes are self-inflicted. So important to keep that in mind. For the running game for Denver, they have undrafted free agent Jaleel McLaughlin and Javonte Williams are tied at 190 rushing yards each. So there's just not much going for Denver. Even the guys that they plan to develop, specifically at the wide receiver position, Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton, are not turning out to be much. Both high draft picks that have not turned out. So not a lot of is working for Denver, and I'm sure Denver Broncos fan podcasts are saying the exact same things about the Packers. Mm-hmm. But I think this should give us a good idea of where the Packers really stack up going against a team that is just very bad on defense.
Yes.
Okay. Big B, any thoughts on Sean Payton's team before we head into our superlatives for this week?
They're just bad. There's not much to say about this team. They're just bad. And we should beat this team. We should be able to beat bad teams. We haven't shown that yet, but I think this week we will show that we can beat bad teams. And this is definitely the worst of the bad teams.
Yes, hopefully this is a Bears-like game from week 1.
I hope so. I need it. To get me out of my Packers funk. I need to be brought back to this team. I need to be excited again going into Sundays.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like it's been a while since I've been excited to watch the Packers play. I mean, that's kind of being too dramatic because I'm always excited for the Packers play. Oh, yeah. But it's just been hard to be as excited about them as usual. And please do not call me a fair weather fan for that. I record a 30-minute podcast before every game, dang it. All right. So yeah, let's get to our superlatives now. Biggest key, biggest concern, and who is going off. Big B, I'm just seeing now in our script that you have chosen the same player that you have been pining to have a big game for quite some time, but we'll get to that later. Our biggest key to this game for me, it's winning the turnover battle. If the Packers don't throw 2-3 interceptions against the Raiders, they probably come out of that game with the win. Turnovers can be a great equalizer. Don't let that happen against a defense as bad as the Denver Broncos. Don't lose any opportunities to score on this really bad defense. Big B, what do you got for our biggest key?
Mistake-free football. Every loss this year, we have shot ourselves in the foot, like we mentioned earlier in this podcast. Just stop getting behind the sticks. Keep in front of the sticks. Keep the ball moving. No turnovers. We shouldn't have a problem if that does happen. Mistake-free football. This Broncos team is just so terrible. This shouldn't be a problem, but knowing us, we'll probably make it a problem, and this will be a game with 2 minutes left to go.
If I was the Packers, I would just simply not make any mistakes.
Yeah,
I don't do that.
I don't see what's hard about it.
Exactly.
Disgusting.
But your biggest key is pretty much my biggest concern as well. My biggest concern is the Green Bay Packers.
Yes,
I am concerned of how they're going to find a way to shoot themselves in the foot in this game. So there's that. What are you concerned about, Big B?
Losing this game, because like I said at the top of the show, if we lose this game, I will be thinking back at every life choice I made that got me to this moment of the Packers losing to the Broncos, even though I have no control over the Packers winning or losing this game. But I will still go back and look at every historical landmark in my life that led me to this moment of sitting in my chair watching the Packers lose, if it does happen.
Every historical landmark in your life. Okay. I would call you dramatic, but like sometimes I think to myself of like how I cope with a loss, and like I'll tell my non-sports fans friends about that, and they'll just give me crazy looks. So like, hey, I can't blame you, but also like there is a boomer voice inside of me telling like not every season can be sunshine and rainbows. So
Hey, sometimes you just got to be really dramatic to make yourself feel better. And, that's what I do.
yeah,
Just got to be really dramatic.
I mean, I listen to Phoebe Bridgers the most when the Packers lose. And for those of you who do not know who Phoebe Bridgers is, she like makes very depressing music. And I very reflective, depressive music. So that is my music of choice after the Packers lose. And also on other times because she's a great artist. Finally, who is going off? I think I also have chosen this player multiple times. But Devontae Wyatt, we talked earlier about Russell Wilson leading himself into sacks, taking a few steps the wrong way, and then, oops, I'm in the hands of a scary defensive end. So, Devontae Wyatt, he's been much improved this season, but he's still yet to have a breakout game. He had some good moments against Detroit in that loss, but the world is yet to be introduced to Devontae Wyatt and understand what the Packers saw in him when they chose him with their second first-round draft pick in 2021 and 2022. Big B, let's hear it. Say it again. Who's going off this week?
Luke Musgrave. I need Luke Musgrave to have a big day so bad. Like, I just want to see him like go for like 3 touchdowns this week. I think it's National Tight Ends Day this Sunday,
That is
so
correct.
maybe they'll be cooking up some plays for Luke Musgrave to have like a phenomenal day at the office. So let's just go Luke Musgrave again because like why not? And he's athletic and I don't know where I'm going with this. So
Luke
yeah, go
Musgrave
Luke
is
Musgrave.
good. To put it
Luke
coldly,
Musgrave is a good football player.
yes. I love this idea of like the offensive game planning room getting together, preparing the game plan for this week. And they put it all together, and then someone's like, hey Matt, isn't it National Tight Ends Day? And they have to throw it all out of the books because they don't have enough involvement for Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft.
That's exactly the coach I would be. Like totally.
Yes, just living for the memes. But
Mm-hmm.
Matt did talk about Luke Musgrave because like there's been a lot of good things from Luke Musgrave, but there's also been a lot like, man, if he can't fix that up, like he is not going to be a successful player in the NFL. Like his balance has been a concern, but also like as a human, I cannot shame Luke Musgrave for having bad balance because I do too. I'm clumsy. Okay. Don't make
I am
fun of
very
him.
clumsy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I cannot like step out of a room without tripping on 5 chairs.
Yeah,
But
that is true.
Matt did talk about Luke today or earlier this week, talking about what he's seen from him so far. And this quote Paul Brettel tweeted out. He said, I think he's doing a great job. I think every day we go out on that field, there's something that kind of clicks for him. We had a good one today where he's running a simple over route, running routes versus air, and kind of talk about it after just what I observed. These guys got to understand, especially in the passing game, you love it when guys go 100 miles per hour, and that's how Luke attacks everything. Everything is just full speed, but there's also a feel to it in terms of when you can tempo down so you don't run through zones so fast that you end up getting covered up. So that makes sense. And like, even though I'm not a professional film analysis, like I can see that in Luke's game that he sometimes just needs to slow down a little bit. Like Matt says, though, you would much rather have a guy need to slow it down rather than quicken up. So yeah, I like what Luke Musgrave, the promise he has shown. He's just got to fix a few things up, and hopefully he can put on a show this week in Denver. So I believe that is all we have for you this week on the Underage Packers podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. Make sure if you enjoy this episode to follow us on all the socials, subscribe to this YouTube channel, all of that fun stuff. We will talk to you later. As always,